Director Fuss, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I'd be more happy to. You all stand, please. Take your hats off. Appreciate it. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And we'll start with the roll call. On my right,
Harry Lincoln, Scott McVeigh.
Erwin Fuss.
and Beverly Fickus, and the staff this evening is Paul Kelly, General Manager, and Kayla Falks, our Administrative Assistants. So at this time, we've got public comment and open time. If there's anything that you wanted to discuss that is not on our agenda tonight, hopefully everybody's seen a copy of the agenda. So we have comments, and then we will have comments after each item also. So anybody that wanted to speak now? Sure, come on up, Dennis.
Dennis Hosein. I'm with the Shasta County Fire Safety Council, and we are now applying for grants. And we've got several grants, and they could all benefit the Happy Valley community. Two of those grants are fire prevention grant. The biggest one is for the Happy Valley Road, kind of clean it up, and a big strip on each side of the road. And the second one, grant, is kind of a curbside chipping grant, where people, the landowners, cut their stuff around their yard or further out, and they stack it along the street in the road, and then the Fire Safety Council comes, chips it up. We bring a crew chippers and chip it up. The third grant, that's an education and outreach grant, and that would help the fire-wise. There's a little bit for the volunteer fire department, and I think the community center, the audio and video equipment to install in there. So that's what we're applying for. And see, I think two of the grants, the fire prevention, come from the state. Cal Fire, and then the outreach comes from a nonprofit, and again, forestry initiative, something, a nonprofit. So I would like a letter of support from the board, and I wrote kind of some sample ones, and I don't know if you got that to the district at all. And so I would like approval for the letter of support.
I did send your email on, forwarded it on to GM Kelly, and if we could put that on our agenda for next week, then we can get that.
Is there a time frame when that letter needs to be submitted?
Right now, yeah. Soon, tomorrow would be great, but tomorrow or the next day, whatever.
I don't know
Is
that.
that possible or not?
We've got the board
I
here.
wrote the letters, so you have to put it on your letter, letterhead. But
All right, so that was going to be my question. When did you need it? Do you need it by Friday?
yeah, probably.
Okay.
Well, first of the week of Monday.
So I don't believe the district has had, I couldn't find where we've written any support letters for other grants for something other than our own, right? So, so I was going to suggest that we have this brought to the motion and vote, say that this is an item that's urgent and that needs your immediate attention. So in other words,
The way to do it is you take a vote on whether to put it on the agenda as an urgency item, because it came up at the last minute. And then if you vote to put it on the agenda, and then you vote on it.
yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah. So that's it. So basically, in your motion, you have to say that you've determined that it's urgent and that it can't wait until your next regularly scheduled meeting, and that you're going to put it on the agenda.
I'd like to make that motion.
And I will second
Urgency
it.
item.
Okay.
Dennis, real quick, before you sit down, because of weather, you canceled the last Firewise community meeting. Is there one time for the near future? I haven't heard yet.
You know, we haven't set a date or,
Okay. I'm interested in when this chipping occurs. I've got a lot of.
you know, that's a grant and it comes from the government.
I know.
It's not going to be soon. First we've got to do a sequel work on the whole thing. And so, at least a year,
Okay.
probably. I mean, I'd like to get started this spring, but that's not the way that these grants work.
So we're gonna put that as item number E on the agenda.
Well, you can just put it on.
Well, I made the motion, we need a second.
I did
second.
second.
Oh,
We
okay.
haven't voted on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to vote on it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So it goes on the agenda.
On the agenda. If you wish, just because it's current, you
Okay.
could now have a motion directing your general manager to submit a letter of support for their application. And then we just take it at that. Does that work?
That
Yeah,
works,
that's right.
okay. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
And I will second it.
And that motion is that we are supporting, do you want 3 separate letters? Okay, 3 separate letters. I think what I sent you
Supporting
had
grant
the
application.
references. Okay, I've got it still in case you need it. Okay. All right, so I have a motion and a second to prepare 3 support letters and send them to you. Okay?
Well, I think it might be best
Clarify.
to have you come and pick them up
Yeah,
at
okay.
some point.
I'll stop over, pick them up.
How about Friday morning?
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay,
Get that
thank
going,
you.
it's pretty good.
Apologize for the short time. The staff at the Fire Safety Council is pretty limited. And this grant, I ended up doing a lot of the research for the grant myself. And so it's just been time, to get the grant, the data for the grant to the grant writer. And then in between, I've been trying to get these letters. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are on to old business and 2023-24 water year update discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just so, for the community and for the board, this is a special meeting. It is specific to the discussion and update related to the water year. It's obviously explicit to the potential of whether or not the district wants to enter into a water agreement with the McConnell Foundation for the purchase of water. It's also really the first chance to look at the last 2 items, which is our drought ordinance and rate ordinance, both of which would be really for adoption at next week's meeting, but it's an opportunity to highlight. So this, the first item really here is just to familiarize everybody on what the 23-24 water year looks like. And just to refer to my memo, hopefully it's as clear as possible. It was written with lots of references and in some haste in some ways last week. But I primarily wanted so that both the community and the board could understand what this letter, which is stamped February 22nd, 22nd, 2023, from Don Bader, the area manager. So just for clarity, kind of reading it into the record. On the second paragraph, first paragraph, they talk a little bit about, early 2023, getting good wet weather, and then, month of February, as you may recall, was kind of below average, and they're cautiously optimistic. So pursuant to Article 4A of our contract, the initial amount of water is, for 2023, 35% of irrigation water and 75% of historical use of municipal and industrial water. Now, then there's a bunch of caveats. Due to remaining uncertainties in hydrology, that basically means weather, snow, and rainfall, etc. Pending court decisions related to the reclamation's request for an extension of interim operation plan. So some of those interim operation plan items can include things like, flows for fish, flows for other things, whatever they may be. Pending development of the reservoir temperature management plan. Again, this is an issue of whether, some releases from Shasta Reservoir that have temperature elements to them. They're actually doing a whole bunch of interesting studies on that. The water made available for 2023 could be reduced significantly. That's his language. So therefore, please take all necessary preparatory actions. Now, they also mention a request in the next is to provide a schedule for water use that does not rely on withdrawals from the Shasta Reservoir in March and April related to particularly irrigation, just because they were concerned about whether or not there's going to be water available. Now, we are not Shasta Reservoir, so we confirmed that with Jake Barron's that we didn't have to do that. So then the next thing you do is you try to figure out, okay, well, 35 of what? And 75 of what, right? So the first thing is the 75% of your historic M&I per their policies is, in our case, 2,265 acre feet. And that is based on our M&I deliveries for 2017, 18, and 19. So that's a 3-year average. That's kind of the way they operate it. And I would encourage the district now and into the future that when we get some unallocated years, we try to up our M&I uses any way we can so that future historic is higher, right? So 75% of 2,265 acre feet is 1,699 acre feet. The next thing you do is you figure out your irrigation allocation. So there's a little bit of complication sometimes as it relates to that one, so I had to ask multiple times, and it was eventually confirmed that my calculation in this document is correct. So you take your total contract amount, which is in our case 15,300 acre feet. You subtract out the historic M&I use, which I just mentioned is 2,265 acre feet. That gives you a remainder irrigation water available of 13,035 acre feet, and you multiply that by 35% for 4,563 acre feet. So that is the way it's calculated, and that is, I confirmed that with Jake Barron's, that is the correct way. And I will just mention, since it may be a subject of another conversation, that if you go back, and I left some copies up here in case members of the board want this, but this is our drought planning and water shortage policy. And interestingly enough, it doesn't have any page numbers, but I wrote some in on page 7. There's actually an example of a 2008 CDP, 75% historic M&I, 40% agricultural supply, and they do the calculation in there, and it's done the way I did it. So just again, to confirm that. So again, I did have a meeting with the Bureau on March 1st, and again, we've had a week of weather that's different than it was as of March 1st, but they definitely communicated and were non-committal, really, with what their, the future was going to look like. one of their members encouraged all of the water managers to strongly not rely on the 75%. Another member of the Bureau said, well, you know, it looks like we're going to get a lot of rain, and they were obviously looking at some of the models that some of us saw in that video, that there's an atmospheric river coming, and, you know, maybe not so bad, maybe we can hold on to that, but, you know, not sure yet, we won't know, and then snow survey, blah, you know, the standard federal bureaucracy mumbo jumbo. That wasn't recorded, was it? So what I did, just for the board's purposes, and just, again, this is all grist for our mill here. If, the other thing too I confirmed with them is if there's a reduction in the allocation, both go down. So in other words, you wouldn't necessarily see ag go down to 5% and M&I stay at 75%. Once ag, or irrigation water, by the way, they don't refer to it as ag water, it's irrigation water. Once irrigation water hits 25% as they ratchet it down, it is every 5% it goes down, both of them go down. So in other words, if there's irrigation goes down to 15%, the M&I would go down to 65%.
Okay, that's a little different than I originally understood.
Well, it is different the way I understood it too, but my understanding is if you went from 35 to 25, M&I doesn't change.
That's a good thing.
Okay, but if you went from 25 to 20, M&I would go from 75 to 70. And so in this case, I just ran some scenarios for everybody's consideration. If we received a letter from the Bureau at the end of March, at the beginning of April, or whatever, that says, hey, based on all these different conditions, it could be they got flood waters, but they also got told that they've got to release a whole bunch of water, that they can't hold it because of some general operation plan. Your irrigation is going to be 15%, and historic M&I at 65%, and you can see I calculated out there. So now you're down to 1472 for M&I, almost 2,000 for acre feet for irrigation. And you can see we walk it on down. It could be, you know, based on what's happening now, you know, maybe it won't get to the bottom one here, which I think is really our worst case scenario, 0% for ag irrigation and 50% for M&I, which would result in 1,132 acre feet for the district. And so those are just some different elements of that. So I just wanted to mention that. This is part of our risk analysis, and one of the reasons why we're having this meeting is, and again, the Bureau folks that I talked to, they knew they were putting a lot of districts in a really rough situation, because they knew that the commitment for McConnell water has to be made, usually has to be made before March 1st, but McConnell is basically letting us at least get in a week or so into March before we make any particular commitments. And as mentioned before, we know McConnell, if you contract for it, you have to pay for it. So the other thing too, just contextually for the board, I have in here just the water rates, because we also received the week before, and it was, again, some of it was changing information, right? At one time we had seen somewhere online the irrigation water was going to be $39.73. I received a letter that had it at 42 and change. So this, what's in your packet, is the correct. I confirmed, and I even had them send me a link that some in the link far way into the Bureau's website. There's a link that has this exact chart of your Tier 1 costs of $39.73 for irrigation water and $33.13 for M&I water. Now, in this chart, there's this TBD thing that always makes everybody nervous, including me, but the reason why that TBD is in there and the reason why it will be zero for this coming year is the district is committed to paying its Win Act stuff, and that's what that's covered. And eventually, when that's all run out, the TBD will turn into zero for good. And then you have your restoration fund payment and your TUD, Trinity Public Utility District amount at the bottom. So you can see in my memo that for your irrigation water, tier 1, it's $39.73 an acre foot. That's what we pay when we've scheduled it. And then after they deliver, we then pay irrigation water restoration fund at $12 a 2 acre feet and a Trinity PUD of 15 cents an acre foot. So I just put in there, excluding the Trinity PUD, the base water cost of the districts for irrigation water will be $51.75.
So please be clear what he just said, excluding the Trinity PUD.
Yeah, I think I received some comments from many people, including members of the board, that there may or may not have been some inappropriate charges and collections for PUD in the past, and I think it really doesn't even impact the cost per unit. So this can be a cost. If we're able to get all the water that they tell us we're getting here, it's like $900 to the district. We can cover that. And then M&I Water has tier 1 rate of $33.13 per acre foot. After delivery, the M&I Water has a restoration fund payment of $24.05. And of course the PUD charge. So excluding that charge, the base water cost of the district for M&I Water is $57.18 per acre foot. So again, this is all preliminary for discussion for you. I provided for you a couple of other items on your dais there. One, which is the current reservoir as of March 6th at midnight. One of the things that has happened is that these atmospheric rivers and snow bombs, or whatever they called them in January, they all shifted a little south and hit right in the central part of California. And we know that the snowpack in the Sierras is 300% higher than normal. So you can see like Folsom is currently at 60%, but 114% of their historic average. Oroville's at 116% of their historic average. New Bullard's Bar, Sonoma County's got theirs. Kachuma, they just had one storm. They went from literally like 0.5% full. They were so dry to almost 100% full. Same even down in some of the lower ones. But Shasta still is at 61% full and 83% of its historic average. And Trinity, which is most disturbing for those of us that are dependent on Whiskey Town Lake and the Trinity system, is only 33% full and 47% of its historic average. Now, admittedly, they haven't done their snow surveys to see kind of how much water is going to be in there, but that's still low. That just shows you kind of the low element of that. And again, I know that the chair sent to a couple of members of myself and the board a video of that ag video person. So I actually went to his website after watching the video, and this is the chart he's got posted on there, which is the drought monitor, released March 2nd. And it still shows us in a D1 or D2, moderate to severe drought on the North Sac Valley. So a lot of that could change, and we know that we've got projections of another atmospheric river. Is it going to hit up in our area, or is it going to go again San Francisco and into the Sierras? So that's our discussion. That's really for you to consider and think about before we talk about the next item on the agenda. But I think we really wanted to have this conversation. Plus, just from my perspective, I don't know, looking back on the district, one of the things, both the general manager, Dave Coxey, and I met afterwards after we had lunch with them with a member of the Bureau, and we said, look, all of our staff have only been with the district, while we've been like at zero allocation or nothing, so how do we even handle this, right? But how do we pay our bills and stuff like that? So again, we're all working through that, and I think it's good for the community and for everybody to have a discussion about the letter that we got. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Director West?
I got a few comments to make and maybe a question or two.
Okay.
If the Bureau stays with the 35 and 75, which in my estimation, judging from what we've seen here, and after living in this community for over 50 years, I would think that that is a pretty good guess. And that what they're looking at is kind of what we're going to get. However, I will mention that as far as the 75% of the historic use, and the historic use is only 2017, 18, and 19, unfortunately. Didn't go back further, which they probably could have. By the way, in 2017, we were just coming out of another drought.
I know.
Yeah, that's right, and people thankfully cut back on the use of water. And so consequently, that's why the numbers were low. And so we wind up with 1,699 acre feet, which in my estimation is not enough for the M&I domestic use in our district for the whole water here. It really isn't. The fact that we've got 35% of our historic use in, or not historic use, but the agricultural use or irrigation use, 4,563. That's a nice figure. We haven't had that quite a while. And if we use that for ag, I think ag would do pretty well in this valley. I don't know whether you know, but at one time or another, not too long ago, we used all 15,300 acre feet of water in this valley because everybody flood irrigated. Now we don't do that anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah. We don't do that anymore. We don't even overhead irrigate anymore. We drip irrigate now. So looking at 4,563 acre feet of water, pretty good. Pretty darn good. Now, my question is, because we're being asked whether or not to buy McConnell water under these conditions. And my question is, looking at our contract says that that water is all convertible to whatever we want it to be. So if we leave the 1,699 acre feet of water as is, as far as domestic is concerned, or municipal and industrial, and just supplement it with the 4,563 acre feet of irrigation water. I want to say ag, but irrigation water, is that doable?
Well, I think it's a very good question, and the short answer is yes.
How much did we use last year total?
Oh,
1,800 acre feet.
Yes.
it wasn't very much.
The year prior to that was 2,476 acre feet.
Because we
Yeah.
didn't have any.
I can't remember what it was, it's like 1822 or something like that.
Yeah, it was
But
18.
my kind of target number is 2,400, I think the year
Mhm.
before is probably a reasonable thought about how much we used. Now, just remember though, I don't think we want to just be allocated with 2,400. We do have a lot of loss, and stuff like that, whether you want to make it 5% or 10%. But if you're going to deliver 2,400 acre feet of water, you need 2,600 acre feet of water in many ways. Same thing with 2,000. So the district has a lot of customers that have municipal and industrial use, but also have agricultural use. And so we would then use the irrigation water to supply them their water. But that's the way we would account for it. So
Yeah, that's the way we've done it in the past.
yeah, and I think again, that's part of the discussion that we need to have is that, and it's really for the next item, which is deciding if we want to purchase any water from McConnell, and if we do, how much. It's really more kind of an insurance question for us. I think if you think, and again, based on weather conditions and things like right now, it sure looks pretty good, like we're gonna probably keep this allocation, but if we don't, then, we're gonna have to make up supplying 2,400 acre feet or 2,000, whatever it might be, with, $530 an acre foot water from wells versus potentially, using $250 an acre foot water. And clearly, if we purchase water and from McConnell and we get into April and May and find out our allocation goes down, we're gonna look like savants. We've saved our folks money because we've got cheaper water than our well water. On the other hand, if we still have our allocation, then it's an expense that we may not have necessarily needed to have. But, I pay my car insurance every year whether I need it or not. So, I mean, that's part of the challenge that we're all dealing with. So it's a good one, but also to Director Fuss' question, because I asked that specific question of a couple of my colleagues, and obviously Bella Vista is a bigger district and everything, but in many ways they're similar. They're getting an ag allocation and an M&I allocation, and as far as they're concerned, they have a sufficient number of same customers that are the same. They're gonna, if their allocation stays what it is, they're gonna meet their needs, combining the two.
Dr. Lincoln,
Pass that down to Erwin.
do you have any comments about?
I have one.
Oh, you have it on, Lori? Okay. This is something I put together, and then it's my turn.
Go ahead, your turn.
Okay. I did some various scenarios. I left a couple copies of it yesterday. If you don't have one, there are some on the bench on the very back. And these were just some water options, and I started doing some calculations to see what HCF cost would be, what the potential was. And if we got all of the M&I, all of the domestic, we purchased 500 acre feet of McConnell. Now, had a workshop with Director Sickes. We had our plant operator, Bill Palmanisa here, and he indicated that we're most likely be using the wells for about 200 acre feet this year. Okay, that cost, based on $533 per acre foot, is $106,600. So I had to factor that into it, and it's factored into all the different scenarios I had there. So at number one, I broke it all down, and you have to remember that there's a distribution or water treatment plant cost in there. And we worked with Mr. Palmanisa on that, and we came up with approximately 56 cents per HCF would be the cost.